What has that role been to this point, and how do you make a differentiation between those who immigrated to this country through legal means with a system that we were just hearing the vice president talking about may need reform versus the impact of people who have come here illegally?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. The short answer is that every person contributes 5 important things to the economy. They bring innovation, they bring investment, they bring consumption, they bring their talent, and they bring taxes. And those are the 5 inputs that any economy needs to create good jobs and grow. Immigrants bring all those same 5 inputs because they're people. The difference is that immigrants not only bring more of those things, but because they have different backgrounds, tastes and preferences, different ideas, they bring a greater variety of all those things. And the United States has forever benefited significantly from all of those things because of the businesses immigrants start, because of the consumption they bring, because of the jobs they create. Those 5 things that I mentioned make immigrants net job creators. Now, you asked me about immigrants who are here with legal authorization versus not. The reality is that regardless of how immigrants come in, whether legally or not, whether through humanitarian or other reasons, every single one of them provides those 5 things. Of course, we would want more orderly and legal channels because when people come here without authorization, they're limited in the amount of those 5 things that they can contribute. But we certainly need those people. We just need a more orderly system to bring them in.
Well, we just heard from Vice President Harris on this, Zeke. What we have heard from Donald Trump is suggestions that people coming into this country are stealing jobs, specifically jobs of people of color like Black and Hispanic workers. He has also advocated for mass deportations of people in this country who have not come in through legal means. What would actually happen to the U.S. economy if we were to see millions of people deported? What is the immediate impact on labor supply and therefore on growth overall?
Yeah, you know, we actually don't have to speculate what the impact will be because this has happened before in both past and recent history. And there's been really good studies that show that it's always resulted in a disaster for American workers and the American economy. For example, there are studies showing that deportation during the Obama era through the Secure Communities program actually destroyed jobs for Native workers, right? For about every million people deported, about 88,000 American Native-born people lost jobs. And also we have historical precedents from the 1920s and 30s during the Great Depression when more than half of the Mexican-American population was forcibly deported. And that also resulted in job losses for Native workers and worse jobs for Native workers. And it also resulted in other bad things for us. For example, Native-born scientists and inventors patented less because they weren't as exposed to the new ideas and creativity that their immigrant colleagues provided. Also, the number of taxpayers went down, consumption went down in the economy. So basically, it's a reversal of those 5 inputs that I mentioned. It would really be a disaster for us.
Well, Zeke, this is something I spoke about today alongside my colleague Joe Matthew on the early edition of Balance of Power. We talked to Scott Bessent. He's CEO of Key Square Capital. He's also become an economic advisor to Donald Trump. And when we asked him about these ideas of mass deportation and the potential economic impact, this was his response to us. So take a listen and I'll have you respond.
In this cycle, when we had the massive inflation, we get, whether it's 11 million new arrivals, or as President Trump thinks, 21 million new arrivals, it does push down wages on the bottom quintile, which I think is abominable. These are working people, Americans, who are seeing their wages get pushed down.
So, Zeke, let's talk about wages. Is that true?
No, it's not. It's not. This is a common misconception. It's actually based on some studies from the 90s and early 2000s that purported to show that immigrants negatively affect the wages of native-born high school dropouts. Those studies have actually been debunked and superseded by better evidence. The most recent study, which actually came out just a few months ago, shows that in just the last 25 years, the arrival of immigrants has actually created jobs for Native workers, both high-skilled and unskilled, and also has actually boosted the wages of unskilled workers by about 2 to 3%. So not a massive boost, but a small boost. So it's exactly the opposite of what we just heard. And that misconception is often commonly accepted because people only think of the arrival of immigrants as an increase in the number of workers, which is true. But don't forget that the arrival of immigrants is also an increase in the number of consumers in the economy. It's an increase in the number of people who might start businesses. It's an increase in the number of people who might bring new ideas and innovations. All of those things make the economic pie not just bigger, but more diversified. And that benefits native-born workers because it creates more jobs and more different types of jobs for them. That's the academic consensus, and it's quite clear really in the last 15 years or so.
Well, Zeke, as you talk about the idea that there are more people to contribute to the labor supply, essentially, I was struck by analysis from the Economic Policy Institute that looked at basically what would have been the growth in the prime age workforce over the last quarter century without immigration. There would have been no growth. Can you just speak about the demographic challenge the United States is facing and how immigration could be a solution, or at least a key part in making sure that those demographics are less challenging?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's no subtle way to put it. It is the only solution because our birth rates have gone below replacement, and it seems like they're going to permanently stay below replacement. Governments have not proven able to increase birth rates through policy. Our population, as we know, is aging very rapidly. We have a lot of people moving into retirement. And so without immigration, the working age population would decline a lot. One recent estimate is that by about 2050, that is, if we stop all immigration, there would be 20 million fewer working age people in our economy. That means 20 million fewer workers, taxpayers, innovators. What would happen to Social Security? What would happen to Medicare? And a lot of jobs would be lost for those very same people in the bottom quintile that this person that you just quoted mentioned. And so really the only solution we have is to bring more people in from other countries or to increase productivity through automation and robotics, like Japan has tried to do. But even Japan has learned that that's not enough. And so Japan is desperately trying to implement a migrant worker program. We don't want to go there.
Zeke, we just have a minute left, but if there were one reform to help make the U.S. immigration system better and better for the economy, what is it? What would you advise?
Look, there's research that's very clear on this by many people showing that the only solution to irregular immigration is to make more legal pathways available. We haven't upgraded our immigration system since 1990. So for 35 years, our economy has grown and diversified, but we're not allowing enough people in. And that's the main cause of all the border problems that are so much in the news and in politics. So we just have to increase the number of visas allowed. We have to also have a greater diversity of entry paths and balance out and have a lot more economic paths, because most of the paths right now are family reunification. If we do those things, we'll have a healthy system that will allow us to bring in a lot more of those 5 economic inputs that I mentioned at the beginning.